What is going on, everyone? Tis Miyanovich, and I welcome you to the main dojo, the place where we process the raw struggles of men in an unprecedented paradigm. There is something inside of you that wants you to be more than what you are. But there also may be something inside of you that wants you to go down. And for some of us, that means going down for good. So, remove your ego, drop your bullshit, become vulnerable, and step into the dojo, mate. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Mang Dojo podcast. It is Miyanovich. Today, I'm introducing you to a discussion series with self-defense subject matter expert Alessandro Padovani. Alessandro is a friend and a friend of the podcast, and he is a significant figure in the liberal gun-owning reality of which he and I work and move in. Alessandro has a company called Safer, Faster Defense. If you want Alessandro's full bio, you can go to saferfasterdefense.com and check that out. But Alessandro is a lifelong martial artist. He has been involved in so many different aspects of hand-to-hand fighting, from just bare hands to knives, all the way to the gun. He is also involved in professional security work, and he has a few cool things in his back pocket, some things that are coming up in the near future, things that he's developing that we're going to talk about mostly over on the Liberal Gun Owners Lens podcast. Here on the Mang Dojo podcast, I try to stay away from politics, as many of the men who we are going to be bringing into the dojo need a break from that bullshit, and we don't want to really be talking about it or dealing with it. The main foundation of the Mang Dojo is for us to not have to worry about politics 24/7 or the greater things that are going on in the world or the shit that's going on in our house or whatever it is. We need a place to get away from that sometimes. However, this is one of those instances where I think it does matter and it is valuable for us to have this discussion. So if you're not up for that kind of discussion, this would be the podcast series that you skip. However, we will be talking today about male psychology, maleness, and martial responsibility, community responsibility, responsibility to kith and kin, and responsibility to society, as many times we might have to process or analyze the possibilities of majorly bad things happening with Homo sapiens because of our leaders, because of the people that lead our hierarchies. This is a common problem for Homo sapiens, and it is a common challenge and a historic challenge for Homo sapien males. Currently, we are having an analysis and discussion on the potential existential threats that are represented by the Trump administration and their blitzkrieg of bullshit. This is going to be core to the discussion between Alessandro and myself. There's not much more I can say about it. We are not perfect men. We are not perfect thinkers. We don't have all of the answers, but what matters is that we are at 80% of awesome. We are trying to do awesome things, and we're able to operate at about 80%. We're chopping it up. We're analyzing it. We're talking about it, and we're giving perspectives, and this is what matters in this instance. So I see tremendous value in this. I'm not sure where else in the world these conversations are happening. There's not much more I can say about it. Why don't you just jump on inside the conversation here and grab some of that gold. So join me, won't you, for this very important discussion with self-defense subject matter expert Alessandro Padovani. How are you doing? Is everything okay in your life?
Personal? Yes. Social? We had better years where the descent into fascism wasn't so quick. But, it's like, I think for most people, who are able to, critically think about things and hold, more than just, I don't even know, man. Like, I've been like so, disappointed by people inability to go past their belief system, right? Like, and so, right. Because like, I have good friends that, that they may not have, voted for Trump, but they definitely were like more of a RFK kind of people and so on and so forth. And it's just like, and I understand, given the history and so on and so forth, but like, how do you not fact check the main source of your belief system, right? Because like, it's like, oh yeah, no, I love to see, those long interviews on podcasts with the candidates, right? Because then you get to really know them, get a feel for them, right? Blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, no, that's a fair way to do it, but like, you may want to check some of those claims, right? Because like, it's so easy to see where, where things are misinterpreted, where things are like left out, right? And so, yeah, it's just very disappointed, that people are really they're not trying to go past their bias, right? Like it takes you like a minute and a half on Google to debunk a lot of this BS, but they don't spend a minute and a half on Google. It's like, And so, yeah, it's been a little bit taxing.
It's like Groundhog Day. Like if you're a reasonable person and you have rationale, it resets in the morning every day, and then you go out about your business, or you connect into the internet digital world, which is not the real world. It's something else. And then you get frustrated again over and over again because what you're seeing is not matching the reset of reasonableness that you have every morning. And so then you get pissed off again because your expectations and my expectations are that these people aren't going to act like primal, tribal, psychological animals, that they're not going to, they don't stop and think about what they're saying. They don't investigate what they're saying. They're not interested in that because their brain chemistry is wired in many people to be rewarded for not looking further into issues. The brain chemistry is rewarded by the emotion that you get initially. So you have people that are just in this loop, but you're not in that loop necessarily. You might do it a little bit, but every morning we wake up and we reset into reasonableness. And then we go into this place where very few people are doing it. Very generally speaking, the internet is not made up of people who are doing what you and I are doing. And then we have expectations because we think, well, this person's a libertarian, so they're not going to do it. Or this person's a friend of mine, and they've done it in the past. They've been reasonable, so they're not going to do it. But then almost everybody fucking does it. And we're like, why? I just think that this machine that we're on makes the world worse.
Well, most definitely. Like, it's very much, when people say, like, when we thought that lack of education was due to lack of information or lack of resources, right? And now, with the internet, it's actually been an amazing tool for evolving education, especially like in many countries. Let's just talk about the US, right? But so the tool in itself, it has an amazing potential. Unfortunately, we come to realize after years of using it that the tool is not just a tool, right? The tool is being manipulated to push certain narratives, right? And whether initially was to make more money, to push certain products or services or whatnot, it has really become a tool to morph people's view of their own society, right? And I think that's where it really comes in on the negative, like where we're seeing the negative of the World Wide Web, right? Because there is still a ton of positive about it. Like anybody can go on it and learn about anything, right? That alone is pretty amazing, especially when you think about developing countries where, if they have a laptop, they have all the libraries in the world at their disposal. So we don't want to throw away the baby with the bathwater, but like it's unfortunate that it took us so long to realize that tool was being manipulated, right? First for profit, and now for political power, which of course turns into profit anyway. And that, I think, is kind of like one of the frustrating things, one of the tragedy of this, right? Like anything else, like if you use it purely, it's an amazing tool for society. Unfortunately, well, not everybody in society is goal is to make society better, and so it really has been a little bit disheartening to see how well it has worked, right? And just like you're saying, when people get their dopamine hit by thinking they're right about something, by having their views, purported values, and so on validated, right? Then of course they don't want to go further and like find out that, oh, maybe I'm not as special as I thought I was. So we cannot, the tool is the tool, the way that it's used is the way that it's being used. But now that the information is out there, it's still up to the individual, I think, to evolve past the tribalism, right? When I talk to my friends, like I mentioned, like when I see a piece of information that validates my point, I triple check it, right? Because I don't want to be the one spouting something and then being proved wrong. So I make sure that I understand it as best as I can. Of course, like everybody else, I have my limitations, but I never like see a headline, see an article, see a study, and then just like parrot it. Like you always fucking put it on Google, double check it, reviews and so on and so forth, and you figure it out, right? And again, it takes so little, but I don't know if it's a different wiring, like, like I don't know where the difference is, but I don't get a dopamine hit by pretending to be right. I get when I know that I'm right, right? And the other fact I think that is very important is like, people are so scared of quote unquote failure, or being wrong or being less than, that they actually become one by not testing and challenging their beliefs, their views, and the views and the belief system of the people that they relinquish authority to. Yeah, it's been an interesting process of understanding better both my own psychology and everybody else's around me, in a sense.
I think that it's important to understand that there is existing science out there that covers what we're talking about. And we do know that the brain is not really looking to move outside of shortcuts. It's not its nature. Because if you think about where the brain's operation developed over millions of years, specifically in the early part of humanity, you're dealing with very small groups of people, and there's a lot going on, and it's not really necessarily complex. It might have been complex to those people, but not to us would it be complex. So the brain really operates at its basis in like a machine of efficiency. So it really only wants to do the smallest amount that it can do, and because it has to move on to something else. So you don't need to think about things too much in that environment, number one. Number two, we didn't really have the prefrontal cortex fully developed yet for being nuanced. That was emerging. That's the second thing. So the emotional, irrational realm still had major sway over everything. It was what controlled everything. And we also know that the appearance of being right in the short window matters more than being right. The appearance of being right and gaining people's emotional reaction to that is what is going to secure your place in the short term in the hierarchy of the village or the hunter-gatherer group. The appearance of you having power. The appearance. If you're a chimpanzee, you need to appear like you have more status. those who don't even appear to have more status get pushed down the ladder very fast. So this isn't a shock that humans are doing this. The appearance of knowing everything, the appearance of being the chief, the appearance of being the master of the information, this matters emotionally. And so we have a tendency to just only do that first. We want to not get shit on. We don't want to get shit on in the chimpanzee group. We want to be up towards the top of it because it's awful to be on the low part of the chimpanzee group. So we're going to do the first instinctual thing that gets us there, which is exaggeration, hyperbole, overdoing it, bullying, all that shit. That's going to get you up for a little bit. Now, if you never get a good relationship with what's actually right, you're going to get pushed down in the long term. But in the short term, that doesn't mean anything. So it isn't a wonder, like what we're seeing. We have just never had a nuclear version of it with this fucking machine. And we are not doing well, like whatsoever. Like it could unravel us as a species, as a society, for sure. For sure it could. It could completely fuck everything up. So it's something I think about a lot.
Now that's a really interesting point that I hadn't thought about it that way before, right? But like I didn't realize that fake it till you make it was a evolutionary principle, you know? And it makes so much sense because if you think about it, like, you know, the first position of power in a group was like the guy that can hunt best, the guy that can pretend to understand why there is thunder and rain and so on, right? So the shaman figure, right, the holy man figure and so on, they were the first at faking it really well. And then you get, you know, that the people invest you with that authority, like because that's the thing that is really interesting. Like in any coup attempt, any kind of dictatorship, like the first level of power is given to you, right? And then they take the rest, right? But just like in this case, right? You know, it really makes a lot more sense, you know, that like you're saying, the appearance of being right or the appearance of, you know, understanding or the appearance is the first default, right? But then once you give up that agency over your life because, you know, you gave power to this individual, then yeah, it's only going to escalate for the worse, right? Because the first level of power you gave them was based on falsity, right? And so, and the fact that people that lie and get power, they're emboldened to lie more and to, you know, to get more of it, right? Yeah, it is interesting, actually. Very interesting.
It's rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
That's rewarded. But the thing that makes it tricky is you notice that kind of power never lasts. It's always cycling through. And that's because it's not based in the long-term knowledge of what's real and what's right and what's true. And it's not based in that. It's partially based in that. And humans will use the number one thing that humans use to gain power through these short-term bursts of bullshitting or exaggerating. And the number one tool for that is mythology. So, and mythology always has just enough truth in it to hook people. But mythology is at least half not true. So whatever hooks the people in the short term, whatever gets their emotions involved in it, and whatever gels the emotions together, and whatever gets the people that are seeking to be in power up. That's the machine that the brain is going to use. And it's not like this is only happening now. And it's not like this is only happening now that we have the modern state, the modern country, the modern city state. This has been happening the whole fucking time we've been a species. We can see why rationale and reason is like our only hope to stay out of the dark, because it's the only thing that can go above that. just the capacity to be objective, to have the long-term view, to break out of the primitivism. It just doesn't seem that we've learned yet how important reason is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, it definitely goes deep in the psyche of people, right? In a sense, like, and I'm sure you're familiar with the studies that show that basically, depending on your nurture and nature as well, but a lot of it is nurture. But like, if you grow up and because of your life happenings, your amygdala overdevelops a little bit, right? So you're always constantly looking for trouble, for danger, and so on. And they saw that that's very closely related to be more conservative in
Yes.
life, right? But the same
Yes.
token, by the reverse, like if you grow up in an environment that is loving and safe in a sense, then your prefrontal cortex develops more, and now you have more capacity for empathy, for compassion, for like the things that make you lean more toward, what's the word I'm looking for? Common good in society,
Sure.
kind of narrative,
Collectivism.
Right? Yeah. When that's the other thing to realize, that like a lot of people are not aware of why they favor a certain things or certain acts, like a certain worldview, and it makes a lot of sense, because we all know that it's a lot easier to control with fear than inspire with hope, right? And so a little bit, and then when you look at the two sides that we have here, one is really a master at fabricating fear, crisis, and the narrative that goes with it, and finding culprits, right? So whatever happens in your life that is bad is not your fault, it's the others. And on the other side, they are on the side of overextending empathy and compassion to maybe people or situations that don't deserve it, right? And there is more of a tendency towards, like, on the center left, there is more a capacity for utopian thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, hey, take all the guns away, there's not going to be more violence. Like, do this, and that's going to be the net result, and everybody's going to be happy, right? And on the other side, kick all these people out, and we're going to have a great country again, right? So it's when you really break it down to that level of how much your own psyche, how much your own upbringing, how much your own psychology influence your decisions, right? It becomes really hard to figure that you can change people's mind through discussion, facts, and better data, right? And that's the thing, because, like, luckily there are a lot of people who have a capacity for to different thoughts at once and figure out what works best or what makes more sense. But I fear that it's not necessarily the majority. It's definitely not the majority of the people who vote.
I just had John Van Driel was on recently, and he's involved in school security, school shooting mitigation, threat assessment. Right, he's a high-level guru, and in his hiring practices, he said to me, he always tries to beware of people with passion, which sounds like not a very liberal thing to say. Like, people want passion, right? Or maybe it just sounds like that's not maybe it's not even a liberal issue, but typically I would think people centered to left are like, yeah, we need to have passion for this, and passion for marginalized people, and passion for the environment. But oftentimes a lot of passion in a person just means that they're not going to have the psychological capacity for nuance, and they're going to end up in many cases being more problematic than helpful, because nuance and objectivity and long-term strategy and being able to see your own blind spots really does matter. But passion, if someone's highly passionate, it can be problematic. So this is what we have on both sides of the reality is we have people who have beliefs and they have a lot of passion, and they're going to choose that passion is going to drive them. And that's a positive. That's a positive. Passion can be a positive, but it can also be a tremendous negative, particularly if you add that into this intensifier of the digital reality. So I think that's also important, is to understand that when people have passion, that's not always a great thing. When they have this massive conviction and motivation for whatever it is, it can lead to worse results.
Well, absolutely. Because I think like passion being an emotion, right, it can obfuscate your intellect, right? So you can then come to conclusion, to decision, to processes that make sense on your passionate side, but they don't have any footing in reality, right? I'll give you an example. So my wife, Robin, she's a wildlife biologist, right? And, you know, in the world of wildlife biologists, they often encounter, you know, civilians, if you will, with a lot of passion for causes, right? The Mustangs in Nevada or the cats, you know, on some islands, right? And so you have this group that organize, you know, we're going to feed the stray cats, we're going to do this. And the passion, you understand the passion, like they see an animal that overdeveloped sense of empathy or compassion, and they want to feed and they want to, but then what happens? These cats are detrimental to the native bird species, to a lot of different stuff, right? So their passion to preserve animals or the ecology actually is counterproductive, right? It's like when people don't want to eradicate invasive plants, right? Because you know, you're killing plants. No, but I'm killing plants that are killing the local plant ecosystem and so on. So, in a sense, like that level of passion is definitely detrimental and counterintuitive, right? Or not counterintuitive, but like, you know, and again, and because people have that level of passion, they feel, you know, empowered and entitled. So what I like to use that to switch the angle is like there is a big difference between passion and purpose, right? And so, you know, it's beautiful to have passion for what you do, what you believe in, and so on. But like purpose is really what you want to focus on, right? So if my purpose is to create a mutual aid society, like a group of people that will come together in time of needs, and so on and so forth, I need to be pragmatic about it. Purpose allows for pragmatism. Passion sometimes does not, right? Passion closes avenue of discussions. You know, purpose needs to open them up, because if your purpose is to create that, you need to meet, you know, manage and all the resources, all the people and so on to get to your end result, right? And so, I was mentioning, just yesterday, a friend of mine, like, you know, after after the election and so on, like I made a very conscious decision, right? Because the first 4 years of this guy, I was angry, like for a lot of the time, right? And this time around, because it's so clear how they operate, how they got to where they are and so on, like I'm not shocked about it anymore, right? I mean, I was really shocked, but like, it's not like, you know, oh, okay. And so in order not to give up to despair, because you see all, you know, this shit going on, you know, I realized that, you know, I needed purpose, right? And talking to a couple of friends of mine that came to the Mutual Aid Society event and so on, we were talking about, like, you know, my friend Chris was saying, well, you know, purpose is an antidote to despair, right? And then we met a friend that hosted the event. He was like, well, you know, community is an antidote to despair as well. And so, you know, we are going forward with the Mutual Aid Society to create, you know, going to create kind of an intentional community, you know, when people put resources at this person, you know, property, and, you know, both for training, for learning stuff and so on and so forth. But this purpose and community as an antidote to despair has been instrumental in helping me maintaining a more positive attitude, focusing on building something rather than focusing on the distraction of the system and the democracy as it is. And by being focused on the positive, by being focused on building, for me and other people involved, of course, it's a lot easier to manage our emotion on the daily. Like what you were saying about, like, you every day you reset your expectation, right? And every day it seems that, the news take a hammer to that. But now if you can do a little work every day towards the positive side of things, right? It really helps with maintaining that balance. And on top of it, you're creating a community that you are going to thrive in, right? And if you can go through the next 4 years without any major loss of freedoms and so on and so forth, the end result is still going to be a positive, right? We're going to have we will have created a community where we can go meet, learn, and not just learn. This is not just about learn tactical stuff. You learn how to create a community. You learn how to install solar power, how to grow food, how to hunt, butcher, and stuff. So. You have a band when you invite people from the community around you, like, to share in the food that you're growing or in the cider that you're making, in the tanning process, whatever the situation may be, a lot of medical training and so on. So all of this has really helped us staying on the positive side of things while keeping our eyes really open wide to see, how the situation is progressing.
First and foremost, the sky's not falling.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't fall from 2016 to 2020, and it's not going to fall now.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of this 4 years, society won't be completely destroyed. If society gets completely destroyed, it will take longer than 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're going to find after 4 years that society is not completely destroyed. Everything else is about management, psychological management. But the importance of rationale is to take away the hyperbole of the primitive mind. The primitive mind is great. It's great for you're on the savannah, you're running across the savannah, and there are 4 saber-toothed tigers behind you, and they're chasing you. And you turn around and you look, and your brain tells you that there's 8 of them. And they're running faster than they are. So that's an amazing mechanism for getting you to run a quarter mile and get up the tree that they can't get, the saber-tooths can't get up. It's an amazing mechanism. It's a great part of the brain for certain things. For other things, it's terrible. So nihilism and this like hyper paranoia about a single administration being able to come into power and destroy everything that we see and we have out here in 4 years is a bunch of bullshit. And there are a lot of people who believe that. There are a lot of people who are plugged into that. What we're going to learn is the sky's not going to fall. Society's not going to fall down. And the entirety of democracy is not going to be able to be destroyed in 4 years. Does that mean it can't be? Does that mean that something will happen at 4 years that doesn't continue this process? Could. It definitely could. And if that were to happen, that would be a major signal that things are really, really, really fucking bad instead of really fucking bad. But for right now, the only thing that we have are our brains. And if we let them get filled up with alarm to the point where it pulls us out of reality, then whatever the countervailing force is against this is going to be way less effective. Way less. It's not about not having concern. It's about not being drowned in the level of concern that basically deludes people. This is why it is so important, again, to have the ability to connect into rationale and to not allow your brain to get swamped by the primitive forces, because it will most certainly send you into inaccuracy in terms of perception and make you a less effective countervailing force. For sure. For sure it will. So this is why people have been asking me, and I've been telling them, titrate your exposure to the internet. Titrate your exposure to the news. You do not have to know every single fucking thing that's happening every fucking day. You don't. The sky's not falling, and you do not have to know. You do not have to know everything, right? That's the first point I wanted to make. The second point I wanted to make was for people that are concerned about, let's call it democracy. Well, this is a fantastic lesson for why it is that, and this is for people left of center who we live inside of a major hypocrisy. And that hypocrisy is we both want democracy and we want other people to be in charge of life. That's a fact. As much as people on the left say they don't want that, they actually do want that. They want the ultimate aspects of reality to be defined by something outside of their control, because that's an enormous burden for a person to say, reality is kind of under our control. We kind of have to take care of the essential part of reality. And that thing over in Washington, D.C. is a part of that, but it isn't the vanguard or the driving force for reality. And it never should be. And if the person is a liberal and they believe somehow that the Washington, D.C., or the Democratic Party or Bernie Sanders and his mechanism or whatever the mechanism would be, that's what drives reality. And we're just here and we are subjected to that. There's nothing more undemocratic than that notion. There's nothing more illiberal than that notion, is that it shouldn't bother people as much when these things happen because these fuckers don't control reality anyway, and they can't. And we've made sure that they can't. That's what liberalism at its core should be. Not, I go to work every day and I have my health plan and I have my benefits and my house and I vote every 2 and 4 years. And then the optimal results for my worldview are just rolled to my doorstep by the powers that be. It's enormously illiberal to be that way because you cede power when you do that. So the thing that you're bringing up, this is what it always makes me think of, is, well, if you don't fucking like the world where these cats have all the power over reality, what are you doing to make sure that that doesn't happen other than vote every 2 and 4 years? Because that's a shit equation. It's not ever going to work. You have to have as much control over yourself and your loved ones and your community, or as much input and influence and over your life as possible, maximized, so that whenever they pull this stuff, whoever they may be, you're resilient and your life really doesn't change that much. That it's impossible for these people to tank society from within the Beltway in DC. They couldn't do it if they tried. That's the actual, to me, that's the actual architecture of democracy. That's the actual architecture of a liberal society or a progressing society. Not the one that expects everybody to fucking do all of these things while we basically just go to work and come home and go on vacation and vote every 2 and 4 years. That is simply a ridiculous notion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, right? And I have a couple of pointers there where I may differ a little bit, right? So on the one hand, well, for one thing, that relinquishing agency over our lives is both a left and right issue, right? The right wants to relinquish it to a dear leader. The left wants to relinquish it to a committee, but the ultimate goal remains the same, right? Feeling safe and taken care of by Big Daddy, whether it is one Big Daddy or a committee of them, right? And again, it's kind of like human nature, right? But and I agree that is like if you don't work in your community first, you're not doing work, right? Like if you go and vote like that's a civic duty, but that's the minimum level of civic duty you can exercise, right? And so if you're a part of a society that works better, you need to invest more time and resources, just like you're saying, it start with your family, start with your village, start with your group, but you need to be part, going back to Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world, right? Otherwise, you're just a one big actor who complains a lot, right? Now, so I think that's very important. Now, on the 4 years are not enough to destroy society. I agree that it's not enough to destroy society. Their goal is not to destroy society, right? But their goal is to establish control over society in a dictatorial way, right? Limiting resources and so on. Part of it is because that attracts their base, right? That's the basis of their power. And, especially when we talk about evangelical, they don't want a fair world. They want a world that reflects their version of what reality should be, right? So they don't want democracy to begin with. And so I think that 4 years are plenty of time, and history kind of like shows us that 4 years are plenty of time to destroy a democracy, not a society. They don't want to destroy society because there's no money in a ruined society, right? That's why the doomsday civil war, blah, blah, blah. There's no economic interest, I think, into something like that, into that scenario. There is a lot of financial economic interest in a scenario where the controls are in place and the people in power can better exploit society, right? And so I think like the first term, what kept democracy alive was General Mills refusing unlawful orders to go and quell protests, right? So that was the first step for me, like coming from Italy, like growing up, traveling and seeing, and being a little bit interested in history and society and so on. You see, the first step for any coup is to get the army on board, right? That did not happen. They learned their lessons, MAGA learned their lessons, and they're setting up to actually put all the people in power that will allow unlawful orders to go forward. So now the resilience of our democracy stands in whether Congress can actually find like a little gumption and stand up to that bullshit. And if the people, failing that, if the people are going to be less than apathetic and actually take to the street if it's getting worse, right? I guarantee you, if something like this was going on in France, there would have millions of people in the street already. I don't know what the fuck is wrong here that there is like 100 people protesting. There is this, there is that. Like, I'm not necessarily prone to worry. Right? I really am more of a cautious optimist on most things. But the dynamics that they're putting forth now are very troubling, are very worrisome, right? And likely they're so inept at the economic things that they may piss off enough people so that they lose the support for the more extreme actions, right? But putting people in power that said out loud they're going to go for political opponents, right? Firing people with the spirits and so on at the Pentagon, putting people that are going to toe the line is extremely problematic. Now, luckily, our society, the American society, the armed forces and so on are pretty big on freedom, right? And so we'll have to see, if the Congress is not effective, what are the people going to do, right? But the plan is clear. I mean, they wrote it down, you know what I mean? So I'm a bit more worried than I've ever been because I see how the chess pieces are moving. And there is awareness of that, luckily, but I haven't seen like the upswelling of indignation that should already be here. So hopefully people are going to find it as things were worse, right? And again, in the US, I was reading something because, I try to read things that bring me hope and joy. But like, when you break it down, or I don't know if you were saying it in another podcast and so on, but like it takes the people in the socio-economic group that has all the advantages to vote their advantages away, right? So when it was men who voted to allow women to vote, right? It was white people that allowed that voted for civil rights for everybody, right? So there has been plenty of historical moments in the American society where actually ethics, integrity, morality prevailed even if it seemed that everyone was against it, right? So I'm not a defeatist. I'm not like, I think we still have plenty of time and resources to stop it from devolving into the way we really want. But I am still worried. And again, not necessarily a societal collapse, but, definitely a restriction of freedoms, freedom of expression, freedom of movement, freedom of association, all those things, like freedom of religion, like all those things. And I am kind of worried because I see a lot of people that would be that mean, right? They would enjoy their positions as the new capos, if you will. So that's why I'm a little bit more worried than I've been so far.
Right, but it's not overwhelming your brain.
No.
Is it trying to overwhelm your brain?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, dude, the doom scrolling is like, it's so effective, right? I mean, right?
Yeah,
and I find myself, I really try, like, I find myself managing my time on screen, And I tell you what, like the first time around was a lot worse, right? Like this time I'm actually better able to control that pattern, right? So I will look, in the morning, when I go to work and I start working, as I drink my coffee, I'll look at, any major thing. Then I try not to look at it for the rest of the day. In the evening, I have another look at it, right? But I still I still find myself just going, I'm going to say 15 minutes and then it's like 45 minutes, right? And so it definitely is a very powerful, mechanism. But the fact of the matter is that, again, it's almost a little bit like voting and like preparing, your community and so on. You have to make the effort to step away from it. Like once you have the knowledge, so do you know the definition of wisdom? One of the definitions of wisdom that I really like is wisdom is the practical application of knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. And that to me is like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you know that, the algorithms are there. You know how your reward system in the brain works. Now do something about it, right? And sometimes you have to tear yourself out because it's like watching a car crash, like watching something. Like your brain needs more and more of a hit of that, right? And so no, I'm fully vulnerable to it, like the rest of us.
We're born to be vulnerable to it.